down from 5.4% to 3.3%. But the reality is that masks a number of differences, and you need to look beyond the surface to understand what's going on. If you look at three different sets of countries as we cut it in the report, the resource-rich countries, like you said, growth has almost halved in those countries. And the Arab-Spring countries in North Africa, they've gone from 5% growth to no growth whatsoever. But the rest of the African countries, which account for about 40% of GDPs, have actually accelerated the growth. Growth went from 4.1% up to 2010 to 4.4% now. So the situation is actually quite different. Africa is 54 countries. It's a much more divergent story and much more nuanced growth story. But we continue to be quite positive about the growth in Africa.
What exactly makes you so optimistic about the future?
Well, if you take the future, just a few things, right? Just look at a number of dimensions. One, look at the consumer story, right? We will have the largest workforce in the world at 1.1 billion people. We can then be the manufacturing hub of the world, right? A number of things have to happen for that to go, but I mean, there's no question about that. If you look at the opportunities for businesses on the consumer front, on the B2B front, huge opportunities, right? $4 trillion today, growing to $5.6 trillion. Despite what has happened, we see consumer spend continue to grow at 4%, which is one of the fastest in the world. Look at technology. Technology is revolutionizing many sectors. It's early days, but we've seen that quite a bit, and we've seen that playing out in the mobile payments in the financial services sector. You're starting to see it in education, you're starting to see it in healthcare, you're starting to see it in retail, e-commerce, right? And that is going to what mobile did for us. That's what technology and the internet can do for us in a bunch of other sectors. So that is, again, why we're quite positive. And then, one of the factors is resources. Prices have dropped, but, prices will come back up. And, we have the largest reserve of many of these resources in the world. And actually, Africa tends to be a cost-competitive location to source these resources. For all these factors, when you start to take a medium to long-term view, we're actually quite optimistic about the continent.
Given the impact that the technology advancement that we're seeing now is having on jobs, you have more and more machines and robots taking over the work of human beings. The growth that you predict, or the future growth that you predict, will it not be a jobless growth in that context?
I wouldn't say jobless growth. I think the future growth, could be affected by technology. We see these trends in the developed world more than we see them in the developing world and in Africa today. But it will arrive, right? So that's why we actually think it's an imperative for governments to really address some of these issues as soon as possible because of these technological shifts that could affect the jobs. But just to give you a sense on jobs, again, for the first time we're seeing stable jobs grow faster than the labor force. Labor force is growing at 2.9%. Lately, stable jobs have been growing at 3.8%. Again, it's very early days. We still have a ton of issues on the jobs front that we need to address to create jobs for our people, but also to empower them to create jobs for themselves. But at least the trend is actually quite positive.
Well, let's take a look now.